Here, we will first make the inner skirt. Place the front and back outer fabrics with their right sides facing each other. After sewing, unfold the front and back pieces. Press the seams open to both sides. Scrape it with your fingernail or use an iron to press and smooth this area. Then we prepare a whole piece of lining fabric. The size of this lining fabric is just larger than our outer fabric. The appearance after unfolding the front and making it a bit larger will be fine. Then we need to sew the middle neckline here. Also, the positions on both sides. This is how it looks after sewing it up. Now let's do some trimming. The 3 spots we just sewed, we need to use pinking shears. For the other areas, we'll use regular scissors. Cut along the edge of the outer fabric. Sisters who don't have decorative scissors, just do it yourself in the curved section. Make some cuts for her. This is what it looks like after the cuts. Then we start from this position in the front. Pull the fabric from the back, bring it over from the pointed seam side. Here I am using a straight stitch. If you don't have a straight stitch, you can only take a look yourself. Are there any other small tools? Anyway, as long as it can perform the 3 transformations, here I usually hold this lining in place because most of the time we do it like this. After clamping it over here, the fabric will have a few wrinkles, although in the end, you can always steam it out. Some fabrics have characteristics that once you wrinkle them, it's quite difficult to smooth it out. Here we try our best to still pull the fabric over it. After pulling the fabric over, we should stop using straight stitches because you use too much force with a straight punch. It easily tears the fabric. Change to using your hand. Slowly take this fabric and straighten it out. Then the front piece on the other side is also handled using the pulled over method. After changing the surface, we handle the edges and corners. Arrange and press slightly. After pressing, it looks like this. Then we will handle the side edge position of the front and back pieces. We take these 2 positions and unfold them separately. Then combine them together. Face fabric to face fabric. Lining fabric to lining fabric. The middle seam needs to be aligned. We follow along the seam line, directly measure the seam. I won't measure here for now. Let me first talk about the other side. The other side is also at the same position. Unfold this area. Then measure the seam along the design line. After measuring both sides, we take the seam positions we just measured. This style line is separated to both sides. Then we combine the outer fabric and the lining together. This part is finished for now. Then we set it aside for now. Let's first handle the skirt panel. The dimensions of the skirt panel. We follow the measurements given on the blueprint. We clamp it ourselves and cut it out with tin bottom edge area. We fold inward along the seam line, fold towards the reverse side, sew a visible stitch on the front side. This visible stitch is sewn with a wide seam. Depends on your own habit. I usually cut 1 millimeter. Basically, 2 or 3 millimeters are also fine. It depends on your personal preference. After measuring the visible line, it looks like this. Then we work on the waistband part. Here we follow this style line. 2 millimeters on each side, left and right, is the gathering line. I usually use thread number 44. For the gathering line. Do not backstitch at the front and back. After pulling out the thread, We simultaneously tighten both base threads. Pull out the pleat line. If one side feels tighter, we will switch to gathering the bottom edge. The size after gathering the pleats properly matches the bottom edge of the front and back pieces. After adjusting it properly, we sew them together with the right sides facing each other. When sewing, we pay attention to the seam surface and the skirt hem. After tightening, first turn it to the front side to check. Check if the pleat lines have any issues. If there are no problems, just remove the gathering stitch we did earlier. After removing the gathering stitch, we take the inner bottom edge and fold it along the seam line towards the inside. Because the lining in front is still wet, so no style lines were drawn. If anyone is afraid they won't fold it well, you can draw this 5mm style line first before folding it. After folding it well, turn it over to the front. Let's handle the position of the opening at the back. Flip the inner part up towards the front side of the outer part. At this time, the outer part and inner part at this are facing each other on the front fold side. Downward along the 5mm stitch line. Pay attention when folding downward. Didn't we just fold an edge on this lining part? The fold line here aligns with the seam line at the hem of the outer skirt below. After folding, check that this part is aligned. Then we sew the same position on the other side using the same method. After sewing, check here to ensure it is also aligned. Finally, trim the right angle area at the top edge. Then we flip this part to the front side. Tidy up and press the edges and corners. After flipping, let's first take a look at the inside surface. There are two ways to handle the inner bottom edge here. The first method is to sew this area with the long stitch method. Use the long stitch method to sew the seam where the skirt hem joins and the inner crease at this spot. The other way is to first tidy this side and then flip it to the front and top stitch a visible line right here. Secure the inner part firmly. Here I'm directly measuring the exposed wire. When directly measuring the exposed wire, be sure to watch one side while the position of the bottom edge of the inner part underneath. Ensure that there are no missed stitches at the bottom edge of the inner part below. After measuring the visible lines, we address the positions of the bottom hem near the two back openings. On both sides, we fold inward directly along the style lines. From the front, measure the visible lines upward from the bottom to the neckline. For those who measured the visible lines well, measure the entire neckline circle together. Then come down from the right side edge. If the sisters are uncertain about the bright lines, everyone just needs to measure the bright lines. Just make sure the collar is pressed flat. Just sew on some Velcro or snaps on the back. Please, when making pants, let's first talk about this colored piece. There is a line at this position, and we cut it open. After cutting, this pant piece becomes two parts. Then we draw it onto the fabric. Then we each clip on the accessories. After cutting, it looks like this in the video. Then let's pay attention to the treatment of the waistband here. leave a 1.5 centimeter allowance. For the other parts, just leave a normal 5 millimeter allowance. Next, we'll first use one side of the pant piece to assemble. The dimensions of the drawing border are indicated on our blueprint. Let me explain this part again. I have drawn a line here. To the right of the line is the left side is the exposed part. That is, when we complete the product, look at the width of the painted edge. The crease on the painted edge is also a double line crease. At 2 millimeters to the left and right of this fold line, draw a crease line on each side. Here, I use 4 for drawing the fold line. Remember not to backstitch at the front and back. Then we tighten the 2 bottom threads simultaneously. Pull out the folded paper. It's fine on my side. It's not too tight. If you feel one side is a bit tight, then switch to the baseline on the other side. The length after drawing and adjusting the polyline on the edge matches the length at this registration position. So here we need to adjust the length of the drawn edge a bit. After adjusting it properly, we align the front sides facing each other and sew along the seam line. After tightening, check the pleats. If there are no issues, just remove the fold line in front. Then we take out the lower half of this material piece. Note that of its 2 edges, the upper one is wider. The lower edge is a bit shorter. The wider one, we sew it together with the upper part, aligning the front sides facing each other. When sewing, we place the pants piece that we just stitched with the edge on top along the style line side seam we just sewed. After pulling it out properly, turn it top stitch at this position. Then we use the same method to stitch the edge at the bottom position. After finishing stitching the edge here, we also turn this position to the front side, then sew another top stitch on the top. This way, one side of the fabric piece is finished. Then use the same method to handle the other fabric piece. After finishing both fabric pieces, we place them together with their front sides facing each other. First, we sew the front section position marked on our pattern. Make some notches at the areas with larger curves. Then we spread this seam allowance to both sides. Next, fold the waistband seam line inward toward the wrong side. Next, we sew 2 lines. The first line is 5 millimeters from the edge fold. The second line is 5 millimeters away from the first line. After measuring, it looks like this. Then we thread the double neck strap through the channel between the first and second lines. Here, I use a turning tool to thread the double neck strap. I directly push this tool through the channel. Hook one end of the double neck strap and pull it back. Then we fix this side in place. Adjust the double neck strap to an appropriate length. Fix the other side as well. Trim off the excess part. After trimming, we continue to align the 2 fabric pieces face to face. Then we sew at the thick area indicated on the pattern. After that, we make some clipping cuts on the seam allowances at the areas with larger curves. Then we pull the two fabric pieces apart like this. The seam allowances in the middle need to be aligned and spread out to both sides. So this spot, after measuring, we make some clipping notches on the seam allowance in the middle here. After clipping, we take the seam allowance on the edge we just measured and spread it apart on both sides. Use your nails to scrape it or press it with heat. After we turn it to the front side, this position will also look more natural. Finally, turn the pants to the front and tidy them up. Our pants are done. That's it. Create the outer molding. We first need to handle the strap part. Let me first explain. This strap is relatively narrow, then flipping it requires some skill. If you really have no way to flip it over, I suggest you use a finished strap. For example, use a woven strap or use something like a ribbon. To replace this strap, here I'm using a relatively thin and soft fabric. This kind is probably 80 count, or it could be 100 count high weave. It is relatively softer. If it were a bit harder, it is definitely more difficult to flip over. If you need to flip it over, I suggest combining the sizes of the two strips. Merge them together, which is the combined length, pin them together in strips. Turning it inside out all at once is a bit easier. Then here I have prepared a strip, a ribbon about 3 millimeters wide. This ribbon is narrower than our strap. This length needs to be long. We wrap the ribbon inside this strap and sew it. At the starting position, first sew it straight down like this. Then turn a corner. Sew all the way down in a straight line. In the following process, do not sew the middle part of the ribbon. Only the beginning part of the ribbon is sewn. After sewing, we trim the seam, leaving about 2 to 3 millimeters is enough. Only trim this longer edge. Do not trim the part of the ribbon at that position. Then we pull the ribbon outward with our right hand. Here the main point is to let the left side, that is the position where the ribbon initially has the fold, stuck in a step. As long as the beginning is a bit stuck, it becomes easy for us to pull this outward. After pulling it out, this surface will then be flipped properly. It's just that this part is relatively narrow, so it requires more patience. Everyone, take your time handling it. After successfully flipping it over, cut off the ribbon joint on this side. Then we will tidy up the straps. Position the straps so they face the sides. After tidying up, because I mentioned earlier, I just mean the length of the two straps. Then we'll fold it in half, dividing it into two parts. Then set the two straps aside for now. Here we will make an apron. First, let's talk about the hem of this apron. Because I'm using this kind of lace fabric, the hem doesn't need additional stitching or finishing. That is, the stitching is done from the top down. The exact position of the edge lace is the length shown on our blueprint. The width on both sides is the standard plus 5 millimeters. Then we pay attention to its orientation. This refers to the length and width. The longer data is in its horizontal direction. The shorter data is in its vertical direction. Now let's handle this longer edge at 2 millimeters on both sides of the seam. Each machine sews a row of gathering stitches. Use 4 for the drawstring limit. Do not backstitch at the front. Then we simultaneously pull up the 2 bottom threads, pull out the pleats. The length after pulling the pleats properly, its length matches the binding above. Place the 2 pieces with their fronts facing each other. Sew them together along the seam line. After gathering and confirming everything is fine, we can remove the gathering thread. Now we turn it to the front side. This is the spot where we just stitched. Here is the other layer of the binding. This unstitched part serves as the seam line. Align these 2 marked points and fold them together. Fold down along the seam line at the edge. Fold it all down directly. It will be easier to fold after sewing the top stitch because this binding is a bit narrow. If you think the seam will be visible, then let's fold this part upwards like this again. Then similarly, start from the top like this. Fold along this short crease. Fold it upwards like this. Finally, we turn it over to the front side. The stitching on the back side is neat, but sewing the top stitch will be somewhat more difficult. This depends on each person's own skill level to decide exactly how to proceed. Before this stitching, let's first trim the seam allowance. About 3 millimeters will do. Then, follow the method we mentioned earlier. Fold the side edge. Here I fold the seam allowance in together. After removing, we slightly trim the seam allowance on the right angled edge. Then, using tweezers, flip these 2 areas toward the front side. Neatly arrange the seam allowance along the bottom edge of the back side. Directly sew a top stitch line on the front side. After completing the top stitch line, fold the lower side edge inward along the seam line. Sew a line to secure it. Do the same on the other side. After sewing, set it aside for now. Here we take out the outer fabrics of Jowkin's front and back. Place them with their right sides facing each other. Normally, we would sew along the pointed seam area, but on this side, the center point of the pointed seam area, we need to insert the strap into it. Here, let's pay attention to the position of the strap. We want it to align with the line of the neckline below and the edge position of the stitched line above, making them as parallel as possible. After positioning it properly, we then cover the back piece like this and sew it together. If you want it to be a bit more delicate and are worried about making mistakes, you can first make some marks yourself. The strap on the other side is the same, parallel to the 2 edges next to it. Here I am at the center part. Make a marking point. Once it's done, we just sew normally at the front part. Stop just before reaching the mark point. After inserting this strap, then continue sewing forward. Align the center of the strap with the mark point, the pointed seam and strap on the other side. It is also sewn this way. After finishing the red stitching, the front and back pieces to check the position of the straps, and the areas beside them. The slopes at both edges are about the same. We can't say after pulling it out. This strap comes over to the left like this, or it comes over to the right like this. Then after it's done this way, it won't look good. The strap on the other side follows the same principle. Then we sew the shoulder area, fold all towards the back piece, top stitch a line on it, make it neater. After removing it properly, we also take a piece of lining fabric. The size of the lining fabric is just larger than our front and back pieces. The appearance after the outer part is it just needs to be a bit bigger. Sew both sides here. Around the embroidery hoop area, after removing the stitches, we cut along the outer edge. The area around the embroidery hoop is relatively wide. You can use pinking shears. If you don't have pinking shears, just use regular scissors to make some cuts. Cut all around the neckline along the edge of the outer layer. Then at the four corners, make straight cuts inward. The cuts must be precise, but do not cut the thread. Next is to turn it over. The method of turning this side is the same as with a lining. It also involves pinching the lining of the back piece. Pull it out through the pointed seam. Although the pointed seam here is narrower than that of the lining skirt, as long as you use the normal method. This fabric is about 60 yarn count. Then we turn it inside out. It's also relatively simple. There aren't any major problems. After pulling out the pinched section, we will switch to using our hands. Slowly organize this part. The back piece on the other side. Use the same method as well. Flip it over. After flipping the dough, we arrange it as a whole. Blanch it briefly. After blanching, it looks like this. Set aside for now. Let's work on the stitched hem at the bottom of the skirt. The wider piece on the left is the front. The two narrower ones are on the right. The identical pieces are the back panels. First, let's work on the bottom edges of the three pieces. There are two methods for the bottom method. You simply fold it inward and sew the front seam line as usual. On my side, I cut off the bottom edge's construction line. Right here, we originally added a 5mm style line. Then I'll cut it off here, then pull the threads outward to create a frayed edge effect. After finishing the three bottom edges, we work on this rough edge, the edge directly opposite, which is the one at the waist. We pull it tight, draw here, still drawing with double lines. Use 4. Then don't make back stitches front and back. At the places on the left and right sides of this pull out one thread each. Then tighten the two bottom threads. Pull this one out after all three pieces are pulled out. We take out the upper part. The hem of the front piece here is sewn together with the upper right sides facing each other. The hem of the back piece and the upper part of the back piece. Sew the fronts together facing each other. Before we sew, we need to adjust first the size after drawing the darts. Adjust the size to corresponding to it. The bottom edge size is consistent. After adjusting, you can start sewing. Here first, sew the front piece, the upper part, and the front piece of the skirt. Be careful not to sew into the inner part. We only sew the outer part. Just sew along the top and bottom style lines. After sewing, check the pleats. If there are no problems, then remove the basting stitches from the front. Sew the back piece using the same method. After finishing all the sewing, It looks like this. Then we prepare 4 bags. The length of this bag, everyone can leave it a bit longer for now. For each one, I might have about 10 to 20 centimeters anyway. Everyone should leave it a bit longer. If later feels too long, you can trim it again. We have a total of 4 spots to place the bags. They are all under this embroidery hoop here. Here I'll explain using one of the positions. We place it in this position. Then the inside part, did we not sew it before? Fold down the inside part. When pulling down here, you can do it like the line I drew. Pull everything out, or we can do it in advance. Fold the bottom edge inside here. Fold it towards the reverse side. After folding, flip it to the front side. Similarly, place the bag in this position. Fold the inner part down. Pull downwards from the top. Pull it up to the crease here. The crease position aligns with the seam line we just made on the skirt hem. After removing it, I will trim the excess fabric on the pocket here. I want to mention something about this pocket. If you're using a ribbon or some bags that fray easily, then you shouldn't trim this bag. Let it stay a bit longer, otherwise the edge will be too short. Wearing and removal can easily cause it to tear. Then we flip this part to the front. Tidy up the edges and corners. It looks like this. Handle the other 4 positions in the same way. After measuring all 4 bags, this is how they look. Now let's handle the opening at the back. Flip the back piece over the front piece. Make sure their front sides face each other. Pull from top to bottom. Then note that the bottom edge here is also folded. Pull to the crease. After pulling, we trim the corner at this right angle position. Then use the same method. Sew the opening on the other side as well. After sewing both sides, we turn it right side out. Use tweezers to tidy up the edges and corners. You can also steam it a bit. After handling it, it looks like this. Then we adjust its 3 positions. We let down the area here at the waist a bit. The top stitching makes it smoother. At the back, we also top stitch at the same position. Everyone handle it yourselves. If you don't like stitching visible then use the long stitch method yourself. Take the inner bottom edge and the facing position and sew them together using the long stitch method. After measuring all the top stitching lines on the front and back pieces and the sides of the skirt hem are all unstitched, right? Here we fold inward along the style line. If you don't want to sew too many top stitching lines, you just need to sew down from the waist here. Just secure the visible stitching on the skirt hem. For those who are good at sewing visible stitches, sew from the bottom upwards, passing by the embroidery hoop. Then move towards the back piece on the other side. Pay attention to the position of this back piece. When we sew to this point, this fabric should also be folded inward along the left side is the same. Sew the entire strip, then go down along this side of the embroidery hoop. Also, the opening at the back here, fold neatly here at the bottom. Sew from top to bottom, sew up to the neckline. The top stitching around the neckline is quite difficult. If the stitching is not good, it can be skipped. Only sew the 2 openings at the back. I have finished measuring on my side. As for me, I measured the entire neckline area. Next, let's work on these 2 shoulder straps. First, we attach 2 button snaps, 1 on each side. Then we fold this area at the front waist piece. Folding it in half, find its center point, the semi-finished front piece of the apron. Also folded in half, find the center point. First, straighten the strap on the side, then align the two center points together. The position on the right edge, it should be flush with the edge of the strap. Then at the edge of the apron, make a mark on the strap. The other side is the same. Make a mark. Then, let's first use a little glue. Fix the straps in the apron in place. This side is just temporarily fixed. We still need to hand sew a bit later. The purpose of hand sewing here is to attach the apron to the front piece. A relatively simple method is that we sew it normally. Then on the front side, sew a button on it or some hidden stitching. Or like me, just sew the side edges. Sew a few stitches up and down, just like the long stitch. This way, when we look at the front side, the stitches are not visible. Mine might be sewn a bit messily here. If anyone doesn't know how to do the long stitch method, you can take a look inside the tutorial folder. There is a separate tutorial on the long stitch method. After sewing it up, we can finish off the stitches on the back of the apron. This way, the thread ends won't be visible from the front. After securing both sides of the apron in the same way, let's add some decoration on the top. Everyone can decorate according to their own preferences. Here, I'm actually using this fabric to make the edges uniform. Also make it with a frayed edge effect. Then fold it slightly. Put a fabric patch on top, then add 2 square patches. Place them at the bottom position. Decorate the apron by hand sewing. You can choose your preferred spot. You can also add some other decorative touches. Here, I'm just demonstrating one method. We will place this decoration at the back in the end. Sew on hidden buttons or Velcro. Adjust the bows on both sides yourself. This collar is now done. Take a look. Let's start by talking about the direction of the fabric, especially when your bag has a pattern. You need to pay attention when the pattern has a direction. First, straighten the fabric's pattern. Arrange it vertically like this. Then the pattern of our bag is a rectangle. The short sides are drawn at the top and bottom positions. The long sides are drawn on both sides. Also, if you want to draw the edges on top, because my 2 bags, one has the painted edge applied, one does not have it applied. When the painted edge is applied, directly sew the painted edge at this position. It is about 1 centimeter away from the edge seam line, so directly along the edge. Here I only added this edging on the front side. This is the front of our bag. If you want edging on both the front and back sides, then we just turn it around. On this side, also 1 centimeter from the edge guideline, which is the same as the other side. Both sides are the same distance from the edge. After we finish drawing, the front and back edges align correctly here. Here, when we make the bag, its lining and outer fabric are the same size. We follow the measurements given in the diagram and add our own seam allowances accordingly. Then we place the lining and the outer fabric face to face. Sew these two short edges. After turning it right side out, we separate the seams at these two positions to the sides. You can scrape with your fingernail or press it with an iron. Then we align the two seam positions. You can fix it with a bamboo pin. Now we need to sew the two side edges together. But here we need to leave an opening for turning. The turning opening is left on one side of the lining at a more critical spot. I usually leave about 1 or 2 centimeters. Except for the reverse opening position, the rest of the positions are sewn along the seam line. After sewing, we now deal with the positions of these 4 corners. Pull the fabric open, like in the video. Move the seam line at this position to a more centered location. Then we press it down like this. It will form a triangle. The folds separate to both sides. Also shape the top into a triangle. Then from the sharpest tip at the top here, measure about 7 millimeters backward. Use this 7 millimeters as the standard. Measure a straight line across. After measuring the line, leave about 3 millimeters as margin. Trim off the excess part. Use the same method to treat the other 3 corners as well. After finishing all 4 corners, it looks like this. Then we first separate the folds of these 2 long sides outward. Scrape with your fingernail or lightly iron it. After tidying up, we fold from the reverse edge. Next, for the sisters who need to measure the outer seam, we push the outer part inward, because I think measuring the outer seam in this direction is easier. If you don't plan to measure the outer seam, then push the inner part towards the outer part. Then simply steam press the areas where the top stitching needs to be marked flat. After marking the top stitching, sew the opening closed using a long stitch method. Then turn it inside out to bring the right side to the outside. Next, we sew the straps. I cut the strap from the leather carving. This size is provided on the blueprint. Everyone can take a look for reference. Just sew a button onto each end position. When sewing, we try to hide the thread ends as much as possible. You can insert the needle from underneath the strap. Then we first sew a few stitches up and down to secure it. Next, sew the button on. After sewing a few stitches to secure the button, we pull the needle and thread out from underneath the strap. At this position, just hook the fabric underneath a little bit. Do not pull the needle out. Directly wrap the thread around it twice. Then pull the needle tight. Finally, push the needle out towards the back side. Slightly tighten the thread. Then just trim off the excess thread. For the other side, everyone can sew it using the same method. Actually, the sewing method is very simple. It's just that everyone should make sure to hide the thread ends. Just hide it behind the strap. Another issue is the size of our strap. The length I provided for the strap is the length of the entire piece. But in fact, there is about a 1 centimeter section on each side. It's this position. It overlaps with the bag's fabric. The overlapping area is 1 centimeter at both the front and back. Please sew the button here yourself. Then decorate the surface with whatever you like. Our bag is now complete. Sorry. Here, when making the hat, let's first take a look at its colorful pieces. Our outer fabric and lining each have several darts. There are 3 dart positions here. When you cut the fabric, just cut it like I am doing. You don't need to cut into this opening. Extend outward about 5 millimeters directly along the edge. The same applies to these 3 positions on the lining fabric. Here, let's first handle the outer fabric. Draw this construction line at the straight position of the outer fabric. Mark it on the front side. We need to add some lace here. The sharp corners on both sides reach this point, right? Extend this style downward. We need to be careful when applying the lace later. The 2 ends of the lace must not go beyond these 2 points. The most important spots to watch when applying lace are the start and end points. We position the start diagonally as shown in the video. Do not exceed the seam line above. Here the pleats are created by hand. When pleating, we need to form a slight curve. Approximately fold 3 to 4 pleats diagonally like this. Then we align the lace on top with the edge of the fabric underneath. You can control the width of these pleats yourself. Just make them more even. On my side, each pleat is about 6 to 7 millimeters wide. The middle section is pleated normally. Now, I'll first explain the tail section to everyone. For the tail section, we try to make it as similar as possible to the front. It also has about 3 or 4 pleats. Then we let it drape over diagonally like this. The very end must not exceed the seam line below. Now let's officially start sewing. At the beginning, sew a few stitches to secure it first. Then you can start making the pleats. Note that our stitching lines are all on top of the seam. If you feel unsure about using the whip stitch for this step, you can first sew by hand. After hand sewing, we will then proceed with the whip stitch. Try to keep the pleats as even as possible. There will definitely be some small errors, but don't let the error be too large. Move the carriage to the tail position of the block. Pay attention that this fold should be pressed diagonally towards the right. Make sure to check the edge stitching carefully. If there is no problem, just trim off the excess parts. Then let's take a look at both ends of the edge. Both curve downward in an arc. Neither extends beyond the contour lines on both sides. After finishing the edge drawing, we can stitch this seam on the back here at the position on the reverse side of the fabric. Align these 2 edges in a slight V shape. Align vertically. Then we sew along the seam line like this. After measuring, trim it slightly. About 3 millimeters is fine. Use the same method. After completing all 3 shindao, it looks like this. Then we also use the same method on the lining. Measure the positions of the 3 Shinto paths. Place the lining and outer fabric face to face, overlapping each other. Here, we need to sew along its edge, except for the turning opening. Sew the rest of the areas directly. Then here, one thing to note is that during this step of seam measuring, you can sew the thin tape in together. As for how I do it here, I finally use needle and thread to sew it in. because at the previous step, I forgot. If everyone forgot like I did, then you can put it on at the end. If you haven't forgotten, we'll just sew it in directly at this step. Now we'll start measuring the seam from one of the points on the reverse side. Try to keep the outer fabric facing up when measuring the seam. Then we measure the seam up to almost the sharp corner at the front. We need to stop just before that. Remember to insert the ribbon and sew it together. Then be careful not to sew through the lace part. If you sew onto the lace on this side edge, after we flip it inside out later, this area will get stuck. I forgot to put the ribbon here. I'll just sew it directly over it. Finally, sew along this straight line. We will follow the stitching line from when we sewed the lace directly along the seam. Measuring the seam to the bottom, we turn it over on our side. Similarly, the ribbon must be placed inside. It also cannot be sewn onto the lace beside it. Pay attention to the position of the lace. If it's positioned more towards the outside, you can use tweezers to tuck the lace inward a bit. Then we continue measuring the seam to another turning point. After measuring, trim the edges at the sharp corners a bit. Then flip from the reverse opening to the front side. After flipping it over, I want to insert it into these two positions. Pass the ribbon through. I have already mentioned this earlier. This is the problem I encountered when I forgot the ribbon during my seam test. Here, just tie a knot at one end of the ribbon. Then, thread it through the needle and thread. Insert the needle through the reverse opening. Just pull it through, and that's all. The ribbon on the other side is threaded the same way. Sisters who have neatly sewn the top stitch after check the top stitch along all the edges. If the top stitching seems unsure, we press it flat with an iron. I have finished measuring the visible stitches here. For other parts, you can add some decorations yourself. This hat is now finished. Here, when making the bow tie, I don't cut along the lines. Just start by taking a slightly larger piece of fabric. Fold it here once. The folded in part is the front side. Then we take the bow tie pattern, align the position of the straight line with the crease, draw the shape, fold the other side as well to align with the crease. Draw the other bow tie as well. Leave a 5mm seam allowance, respectively. Cut out these two patterns. There is a line here on our pattern. First, mark the position of the line. Then extend this line upward, just towards the right angle side. The middle area, choose a position to make a facing. Then we sew along this line. Leave a gap at the facing position. All the sports positions are gathered together. After sewing, trim the seams a bit. Sew the right angle parts to shape them for the shoe. Make some notches in the curved areas. Then directly turn it inside out from the opening. After flipping, tidy up. This is what it looks like after steaming, because after steaming the previous part, there are no marking points here anymore. We take this line on the bow tie, make the same mark. Note that the two curves are positioned outward, including when we assign it later. When recording them together, the positions of these two curves are also outward. First, take out one of them. Fold it once towards the front side. After folding, fold the upper part towards the back side. Fold the lower part towards the back side as well. The folding position is exactly where we marked earlier. If you want the bow tie to be a bit bigger, you can also shift it back a little. Then we will fix this position Here I sew it directly using needle and thread. Sew 2 stitches and wrap 2 loops. This position is fine to fix firmly. We take the other piece of the bow tie, fold it and fix it using the same method. Tie the 2 parts together at these positions. Finally, I personally wrap the rusted wire around twice. Use this thread to block it. Finally, let's sew the back seam button. First, find a position for the seam button at a relatively centered spot. We haven't sewn the front-facing area yet. We can insert the needle and thread through the opening. Leave the thread end inside the fabric. Then put the button back. Pass it through one of the holes. Sew around this hole 2 more times. Sew 2 or 3 rounds. After you feel it secure, we move the needle and thread to another hole. At the spot between these 2 holes, sew 2 more rounds to secure it. After ensuring the middle position is secure, sew around the hole at the very edge twice to secure it. After stitching these 3 spots securely, we pick a bit of this white thread, which is my sewing thread. Wrap the thread around the needle 2 more times and tighten it. It's equivalent to tying a knot at this spot. Then we find a place to bring the needle out. Pull the thread a bit tighter and trim off the excess part. Use the same method. Sew the button on the other side. Then we finish sewing the button on this bow tie. Today, let's learn how to make this buttoned flap. This is the buttoned flap I have already made. Here is the button. When using it, you fasten it like this. This is all you need to do. I'm using embroidery thread here. It's the kind that's a single strand folded in half. For our thread, 2 strands. You can also use hand sewing thread if you want. If you use hand sewing thread, the finished buttonhole will be a bit finer. This one will be slightly thicker. This depends on your personal preference. Let's first demonstrate how to do it now. Let's first find a good point. For example, I'm working on this red dot now. I am indeed working on this red dot. Then we just offset it. Because this clutch plate is round, this means this is the center point. The middle part is the center point. Everyone should move it slightly to the right. Normally we gather this area. The lining needs to be folded inward. Then it is joined to the outer fabric seam with a long stitch. But I usually do this step after finishing the entire garment. Finally, sew it together using the long stitch method. Why is this step done last? Because whether you are making snap fastener discs or if you want to do it on the outer fabric of the clothes to add some decorations, if the red thread is used in hand, it certainly has knotted areas. It has this thread tail. If you do this step at the end, we can push the needle in from here. For example, when we make buttonholes, I now directly insert the needle through this opening, coming out from the spot I want, coming straight out from here. The thread end will be directly hidden inside the garment. This way, it looks more aesthetically pleasing. Then let's continue to discuss the method of disc latching. First, we find a point. What we just mentioned is starting from this point, the mark we made on this point. So the position where we take the button disc out should be just a little to the right of this point. Then we insert the needle from this side. For the needle insertion, because this hand-sewn fabric has two layers. One is the outer fabric and the other is the lining on the outer fabric. Then we turn it over. At this point, if we change the direction like this, it's also to the right of this point. It's roughly the average position. Starting the quilting from this side, also on the surface fabric. Let's pay attention to the quilting now. For quilting, the stitches are made flat like this. Then we need to take this needle out from the original needle exit point through the same opening. You can take a look. If it is a bit tight here, you can lend a small tool. Use the clip to clamp it out. Don't try to straighten this area all at once. You can't pull it all the way in. We need to leave a bit of thread. The space we leave now corresponds to the size of your button. Because there are many types of buttons. Let's take a look now. I have prepared 3 kinds of buttons that can be used on this button disc. This type is a standard button. There is a buttonhole at the back, and these 2 are just ordinary small pearls. It's just that one is a bit bigger and the other a bit smaller. The size of our loop depends on the size of this button. Because when we fasten it, we do it like this, hooking it on and fastening it in. If it's too small, if the loop is too small and the button is too big, or it definitely won't fasten. If the small loop is obviously much smaller than the button, then we need to continue tightening it. So it depends on what size button you want to use. For this time, I plan to use this medium-sized one. The coil size should allow the button to pass through. It shouldn't be too big or too small. All right, let's continue making the button loop now. This needle goes directly down through this hole. After inserting it, move your hand downward. Come out from this spot. Take the needle. Pull it over. Pull it tight with your right hand. For the rest, we just repeat the previous steps. Pass the needle down through this eyelet. The thread is like this. We pull the needle out from underneath with our hand. Tighten. Tighten. Thread it through. Pull it out. There are many methods to make a buckle plate. This is just one of the demonstrations I'm showing. I also learned this method probably also learned it on Xiaohongshu, but it was a long time ago. I've forgotten exactly whose post I saw it on. We keep repeating this step. Wrap it around once like this to finish it. Then when we finish over here, the needle goes back through the original hole, passing the needle back through. You can pull the needle out from the sleeve side like I do. Then just tie a knot here to finish it off. This way, we have finished one buttonhole.